Very well. Then welcome to my third webcast about ModSecurity and CRS. I'm stopping to share my screen here. Very well. Welcome to my webcast. I hope everybody can hear me. Otherwise, please raise a hand. Where do you have the chat? I don't see anybody telling me something. Before we start, people have asked me whether I take questions or not. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat, and I'm going to respond to them at the end of the webcast. Let me take off my helmet, and then we can get going with the news. So the CRS project has done an annual developer retreat with 12 people in Italy. It was 2 weeks ago, and we've got a lot done on site in several projects or CRS sub-projects, and we did quite a few workshops on top. Let's take a look at that. What did we do exactly? I've presented a little summary that I've done yesterday. Where is he gone now? It's this one. Can't find my stuff anymore. Is it this one? No. Here it is. Here it is. Okay. So we've been to Italy for a week, 12 people on site, 5 larger projects, 5 workshops, and a few very good photos like the one you see on the left. We also did 2 team building workshops. We went to Milano. We went to see the Duomo. We didn't eat any pineapple pizza, which is always a big discussion within the CRS project. There seemed to be a significant faction of pineapple pizza lovers, but we were able to defend against that while on site in Italy. Otherwise, they might have kicked us out of the hotel. So this is always very touching. What I think is very impressive is that we got to work more than 600 hours during that week. So when you gather 10 CRS hackers together and developing rules and doing workshops and working on sub-projects and ideas, that is always very intense and time intense. And very often we will continue to hack away or discuss things even after dinner. Often the sessions went up to midnight. And I think everybody was quite exhausted after the full week. One thing that was really interesting is we did a workshop where we looked at the roadmap and how we want to organize the project going forward. And in that workshop, we identified several sub-projects. So what started as a rules project, the ModSecurity core rule set project, has now evolved into many, many different directions. We apparently have the rules. With CRS4, we're going to get plugins. And later in this webcast, I'm going to explain to you how plugins are supposed to work in CRS4. We're maintaining official containers, namely a CRS container that people use when they want to run on Kubernetes and stuff. And the advantage of that official container is that it's highly configurable. When you build the container, when you start it, you can configure it outside via standardized means. So you don't have to dig into the container and the config files. You just pass this at config options when building the container. That's really useful. And that's an own project in its own right under the CRS umbrella. We're building more and more tools to go with CRS, to assemble the regular expression, to do quality assurance, to help us with releases, help with documentation, and so on. And that is growing into a real tool chain, actually. We did this big bug bounty project in spring, and this highlighted the need for a formal security process. And there is quite a bit of administration overhead when it comes to security, to reported security findings, to responsible disclosure of that, to coordinated disclosure. I mean, we have a lot of users, and even just burst out with findings, everybody's caught on the left foot. So this this is actually quite demanding to do this properly and communicate with the right channels, also communicate with the reporters. This is probably growing into its own sub-project sooner or later. Apparently administration, because it's getting bigger and bigger, we have more and more sponsors. It's very welcome, but it ultimately means work. I mean, that is obvious. Organizing a developer retreat is a lot of work, and that is its own area within the project. We're improving documentation. We do a wee bit of public relations, not so much about publicizing CRS, but for developers within the community, keeping our website up and running, doing social media. We have somebody helping us there. Actually, it's the person who took the picture on the right. That is a possibility now, and also very useful for us. We have the sandbox that I've presented before, where you can test payloads against different CRS installation, different CRS versions, different backends. You can try out whether CRS will catch a certain payload or not. And then we have the project Seaweed. A blog post is coming up there. Seaweed is a Google Summer of Code project that did a bit more than a proof of concept. And we're going to make this production next year. And that is about testing CRS against new CVEs, a proof of concept, exploits in the wild, and project Seaweed tries to assess them against the CRS sandbox. Is a new exploit in the wild detected by CRS or not? And if it's not detected, then we have to do something about it. This is all around the Seaweed, and it's basic so far. It's a tool chain, a pipeline where exploits in the wild come in and we assess them properly, and it's all automatic, which is very useful, very cool. It's just not yet production ready. We're going to release or polish this to production readiness, production use after CRS 4 comes out. And then the status page, that's a different idea. You can look this up on our GitHub in the wiki, what this really means. I don't want to go too much into detail about the status page. I've mentioned CRS 4. We did, of course, the roadmap discussion, and we looked at CRS 4. We wanted to bring this out in spring and summer. And then the bug bounty program hit with so many findings that we're closed now. We're basically done. Our first run over all these 150 findings is done. We have addressed all of them, but not all of them are clear for good or close for good. So we did a second check round. It's all automatic now. We've run all the tests again, and we identified a couple of them that we thought we fixed, but in fact we didn't fix, or it could be something that we fixed, but then a different finding interfered with that rule again. So we're now weeding this out. The important part for you is that all these bug bounty fixes, findings are now in our test suite. So before we do the release, they're going to be closed, all of them. And then we do for zero release. We're now looking into a release candidate in December, maybe, hopefully early December, and then a 1 month or so release candidate period where you're invited to test this out in reality, maybe even in production setups, to report back bugs and findings and issues with that release candidate. Interesting, this was going to be a release candidate number 2. Why is that? Because we already did release candidate 1 before we did before we did the bug bounty, and of course before the developer retreat. So that much on news from the CRS project. So things have been very intense at the developer retreat. We made huge progress, and we're getting really close now to CRS 4. We have been saying this for quite some time, but we have a plan now how to get there exactly. Good. Second item on our list, technology. Let's look at plugins today. Plugins is, as I've mentioned, a new feature in CRS 4. So CRS 4 comes with plugin functionality. Plugin allows us to keep the mainline core rule set rule set, so to say, clean, and additional functionality, exotic functionality, edge cases, and special use cases are limited to individual plugins that you as a user can then pick and install or offer as an integrator to your users, or you don't, or you complement it with your own plugins. In fact, I have written 1 or 2 plugins myself that I haven't shared because it's very personal. It's just something useful on my website, and it's so easy to do. Let's first look into how do these plugins work. It's actually really, really simple. There is the template plugin project.
Excuse me, Christian. Are you sharing your screen?
Yes, because I have to share my screen again.
I don't see it.
Thank you, Alessandro. Share the screen again. Good.
Yep. So, now it's okay. Now I can see it.
Very good. So template plugin, this is when you want to do your own plugin. This is how you start. And here you see how this works. You're probably familiar with the CRS include. The CRS setup include, that is the existing configuration that you're familiar with. And then the rules include. So first you include the configuration file, and then you include the rules files in the rules folder. We're adding 3 additional includes. That makes it looks a bit complicated, but we discussed this a lot. We did a lot of tests, and this is really necessary. We have to split it into 3 different includes. The names are simple enough. There is first an include for asterisk or wildcard config conf, then a second include for wildcard before conf, and a third and final include for wildcard after conf. So a plugin can have its own configuration. It can then deploy rules that are loaded before CRS is running, phase 1, before CRS jumps into action, or it runs after CRS, whether it being phase 1, phase 2, 3, and 4. So you have granular control where exactly you want to place your plugin. And the idea is you can write additional ModSecurity rules that will interact with CRS. The simple case is you have an additional detection rule that will then raise the anomaly score, and the whole blocking problem is handed over to CRS, or rests in CRS hands. So you only concern yourself with additional detection, special means, whatever you do, and CRS takes care of the rest. That sounds really simple, but so far this has been very hard. And when you wrote your own rules, we'll probably do as deny immediately, and then you had to look at the error page. It's all a bit complicated. With plugins, it's so much easier. And it's also much easier for the project because now we can do advanced functionality that we don't want to have inside the mainline CRS distribution. In the mainline rules, we can simply put that into an experimental or in a future plugin or in a special needs plugin, and those people that want to use it are going to install it, and the other ones won't do that. Let's look into one of these plugins. I'm going right on our web server and netneta.com. CRS. Here are the plugins. So I have the folder that you saw with the include. That is this folder on my screen now. And I have several plugins in here. The unwanted URI, that's my own stuff. The non-Apple 403, that's my own stuff. But there is the fake bot plugin. That is now an official CRS plugin, something that CRS developer Azurit developed, and it looks for fake bots. How does that look? Let's check it out. The fake bot after conf. So in phase 1, after CRS is loaded, after phase 1 of CRS happened, CRS is now initialized, it's configured, it's working. Phase 1 rules have already executed, and we're hitting the fake bot plugin now. And the fake bot plugin looks at the user agent. And if the user agent is Apple bot, Bing bot, Facebook bot, Twitter bot, and Google bot, we have a hit. And then we have a change rule down here where it branches into the fake bot Lua script. So most of the requests will not hit this rule. Most of the requests is a Mozilla, whatever client browser, it will not hit. But certain user agents will branch out into the fake bot Lua script. That means there is no performance loss here whatsoever. Very few clients will execute the Lua script. For the rest of them, they just pass on. However, if a client tells me, hey, look, I'm coming from Twitter, or I'm coming from Google, Apple, whatever, then we're going to inspect the client with the fake bot Lua script. Let's look into that. What the script, in fact, does is also very simple. The script is doing, see if we can identify it easily. What it does is it does a lookup. How do you have it? P-call require the socket not installed. Where did we have this? I cannot easily identify the lookup anymore. Okay, we do, put it short, we do a reverse lookup on the IP address. So you tell me you're a Google bot, I do a reverse lookup on your IP address, and the resolved IP address should point to Google. Apparently, if you're a Google bot, then your IP address should be a Google IP address. And if it's not, then you're probably a liar. Looking here for the match bot is in here, where we say if the match bot is Google, then the bot domains should be Googlebot or .google. And if that's, then it's Googlebot, apparently the bot name. And this goes on for Facebook and Bing bot, etc., etc., etc. And if it's not, then it's a fake bot. And then we have identified a fake bot of the name and returning as a detected a fake bot. So we have added a new sensor to CRS now, a sensor that is able to do reverse lookups and tell me whether a certain bot client is really in fact what the client pretends to be, or if it's a liar. And if it's a liar, then going back to the rule, then we'll raise a critical anomaly score. So we give this request an anomaly score of 5. That means that client is going to be blocked here. Let's see how often I have this. I go 10 days, no, error log. Let's do this for a full month. 30 means age 30 days. And then I'm grepping for this rule idea. And how many lines do I get here? 281 requests. Not bad. So within a month, I had 280 requests from fake bots. Let's look at mail data. What do we have here? This one, Facebook eternal hit found. We have a Facebook eternal hit, Facebot, and Twitterbot. Yeah, it's a combination of Facebot and Twitterbot. Yeah, blame me. I don't believe a word you're saying. But even this one here, a compatible Google bot, 37 time. Haha, but you're fake, in fact. Yeah, let's maybe check this out. Just to give you an idea, when we do this, here, where is an IP address? Here is an IP address. Give me the reverse lookup. Cannot even be found. I'm not sure if that could be the server. Let's look from home. No, cannot be found. If this was Google, it would have been found. Been identified it. So this is a simple example for a simple plugin that is very easy to write. I mean, you've seen the rule, even the fake bot Lua script is relatively simple. It's just a few case statements after each other, and it's highly effective. In fact, a third, when I did the math or the statistics, a third of the bots were fake. So I was able to shut down or shut off a third of the bots pretending to be Google, Bing, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. And I think that's quite substantial. It's a neat little plugin on the side. It's not really essential functionality. It's Lua, it's complex. You need to have Lua compiled in, probably wouldn't run everywhere. So this is nowhere mainline functionality. Also reverse lookups, that's not CRS stuff to do. However, it's very convenient as a plugin. Good. So let's move to the next section where we look at the log files. You've probably by now in the third edition of this webcast familiar with the standard log that I'm looking at. This is still not graphical, probably staying that way for a bit more time. We still have around 400K requests, always more or less in this region for a given month. So this is since the last webcast. We have seen 7,000 requests that scored, so that's slightly below 2%. It's always like that on nair.com. That's a number I keep in mind. It's usually around 2% requests are offensive requests, attacking requests. Going to see if we have more false positive, new false positive or not. We blocked like all of them, or no, and we blocked a lot of them. 6,000 of these requests were on relevant URIs that are really, where we really have an application that we're serving, and everything scoring anything were blocked. So whenever we detect something on nair.com, we really block it because we handled all the false positives. We know what we're doing, so we can really block them with a very low anomaly threshold. If I'm scrolling down, these are standard numbers. I don't have to repeat this. You've seen this before. There is only one thing that I want to show you. I have 3 500s here. That's 500, in fact. It could also be other 500s, but 3 500. That's rare on nair.com. I want to check these out. So I'm going to dump the access log. I'm grepping for status 500. I do the quotation mark because in the access log, right before the status code is the closing double quote of the request line. 500 could be anywhere in the log file. It's just a number. But if it's right after the double quote, then I know it's really the status code. So double quote space 500 space is really the status code. Getting 3 requests. Here, a post to 403, a post to a license text, and another funny URI license TXT XML. That's really, really odd. The first one, I don't know why he posts to /403. I don't even know if that exists, but it sure looks funny. And all 3 requests coming from 3 different IP addresses. That's a US, that's a MD. I don't even know. This is Macedonia. I don't know. And this is Switzerland. Okay. 3 IP addresses, different dates, resulting in a 500. Give me the unique ID, and I go temp ID. Yes, I'm writing this. Sorry, this was what I wanted to do in a temporary file. And now I'm going to look at the error log with these 3 IDs. So grep minus lowercase f, and then a file means I have a pattern, a file with several patterns in it. I'm going to look up these patterns in the error log. That's the unique idea. And now inspecting the error log with these 3 unique IDs. What do I find? Okay, I have ModSecurity, XML parser error, XML failed parsing document. That is quite spectacular. Why? Because ModSecurity usually, when it has an XML parser error, it fails with a parsing error failure, and that is detected by a rule, and you can then handle it on the rule in the rule section of ModSecurity. Within standard rules, it's actually rule 200,002 that usually detects this. However, here, the error is so grave that ModSecurity aborted the parsing. So it's even worse than a standard misformatted XML document. It's one that is so bad that parsing had to be aborted, and we get a server-side error. When we have a standard parsing failure and then the body parser failed and we do a rule about this, then we get a 400, or rule 200,002 issues a status 400 bad request. But here, request, in fact, it's so bad that the server explodes, so to say, or at least it aborts the request and responds with a 500. That's quite rare on NEA.com. And having 3 of them in a month told me that I really want to investigate this. Here is the same thing. Here we have a connection by peer. So the guy stopped talking to us. I think the 138, that's a Swiss IP address. In a moment where it result in a 500, and then another parsing failure. Interesting here, the parsing failures are duplicated. So we have them twice. Within the same millisecond, we have the same message twice, and then it really aborts on the same request. I don't think that's a big deal. The request was aborted, it was a 500, it should be a 400, but it's no big deal, and we know nothing came out of this. If we look up a session for one of these users or these clients, I have an alias here that gives me a summary of the session. So he does a / on license TXT, and then he expands it with feed and author, of course, lands a 404, and then suddenly a post. I mean, it's all within the same second. That's already a bit odd. I mean, obviously not a browser, certainly not with these requests. And then a post on the XML remote procedure call. It's funny. It's funny. I don't really know what's happening here. I didn't dig more into that. I'm happy this was blocked, and it gave up. After the 500, it did not return, certainly not from the same IP address. Good. So that is everything that really caught my attention in the last 30 days of logs. Let's look at false positive and if there is something new that we have to handle. Here we're in the false positive script. I'm going to call the false positive report with a threshold of animal score 2. Done this in the previous month more extensively. Config file for NEA, and then the false positive report conf, and then we pass the access log and we pass the error log. Let's let it do its thing. 400,000 requests. It parses, it runs through, and it has identified 6 lines in Xcode, 6 lines where we need to inspect manually. This could be false positive. I think it always strikes me that 20,000 alerts and the filter of the false positive anomaly filter that we're bundling with CRS is able to throw away 20,000 of those, and 6 of them he presents to me to make a manual inspection. I'm switching over to the browser now, to the HTML version of this report. Would be here. That's the same output. Here are the 6 lines. And we can now click on that directly. And this takes us right into the CRS software. What happened here? The first one, we have an SQL injection detected via the external lib injection library. That's a third-party library used by ModSecurity. And get that, NEA as a PWD. Is that even a password? Certainly funny. And it identified this as a lib injection, SQL injection. Good. And look, the other ones are also posts or login PHP. Let's look at this one. Same thing. Now it even uses Folini as a password. That's now really funny. Let's look at the third one. What we have here. This time it's the admin123. No, admin123 is not a password on that NEA website. So I see a pattern here. I see an attacker from different IP addresses, perhaps even check, trying out different passwords, bumping into lib injection. And I want to get rid of those. That is not a false positive. And if I look at the URI, I mean, if you strike an SQL injection on the login page, chances are this is not a false positive. I mean, who does an SQL injection on the login page? When it's an attacker, it's that beat sign for an attacker trying out something. So let's get rid of those alerts immediately. I'm going into the NEA config folder, obvious attack patterns in the error log. And I'm going to write this here, 942.100. Don't have it here. This one I want. This is also for documentation purposes. So whenever I hit the 942.100 with this message, but the message wouldn't be necessary, but I keep this here for myself. And now I'm adding the URI as well. So it's possible that the 942.100, the lib injection, does a false positive. But if it's on this URI, then I'm no longer interested. So out of the error log alert, I constructed this, this regular expression that will identify these attacks. Closing this, going briefly here, back here. This is the rule idea. This is the message. This is the URI. So if we have a regular expression with these three elements, then it's an obvious attack. I've reconfigured the false positive script now with this config file. That's a list of obvious attack patterns. You see them on my screen now. And now I run the false positive script again. I had 4 of these in here. Let me show you again. This one, this, and this. 4 of them have exhibited that pattern or behavior. Let's try this again. Running the script again. Whoop. We're down to 2. Very cool. So these 4 are now gone. They will never come back anymore. I've identified this as an obvious attack pattern. False positive script, don't show me this stuff anymore. And in fact, it goes a step further. It says, if your IP address is performing this, then you're not throwing false positive. Then you're an attacker anyway. I don't care about you anymore. For this analysis now. 2 remain. Let's look at this one. I mean, it could be a false positive. But what has happened here? We have the data %2, and it tells me a URL encoding abuse attack attempt. So somebody did URL encoding with the % symbol and then a 2. A 2F would be a slash. That's a URL encoded slash is a %2F. And we're in the URI, so it would be very natural to add a slash here. But the %2 simply means that this is an abuse attack. You cannot skip the F in a %2F. So that's an attack. That's not a false positive. That's an attack. And I don't want to see this anymore for today. So this is a neat little trick. I have a script, I have a temp file with ignore patterns. And this is a file that I'm erasing every day, but while running this false positive script, I add unique IDs into that file and then they disappear. That allows me to rerun the false positive script and get lesser and lesser and lesser findings until they're finally gone. So I'm entering this now, and this should now disappear. This request should disappear because it's a real attack. What did I do? I did a mistake. I have not extended this. That's stupid. I've overwritten the auto ignore patterns I've done before. So let's get rid of this, get rid here, because the only one remaining is this. That's a funny browser. I don't know that. User agent, a Roam 115 on a get on a GeoIP feed, whatever it is, but it's called a 403. How did it do that? it has an illegal charset parameter. Funny. Let's look at that. What charset parameter do we have? This is the data, so that would be the accept header, and it does not have a charset parameter. So that's odd. I've looked into this before in the morning when I prepared the webcast, and I don't know what is going on here. And I would say this rule is buggy. We've updated that rule for CRS4. I'm running the latest CRS4. It's actually bleeding edge, even if it indicates release candidate 1. This is bleeding edge, and I think that rule has a problem now. It's also a false positive that I haven't seen before. So I reckon this is something really new that we introduced in the last few weeks, and I'm running bleeding edge, so I'm seeing these problems. My plan is now to open a false positive issue on GitHub, so the CRS project, me and my friends, can look into this in detail. So this is indeed a false positive, and that's it for the moment. The other ones I've handled, a few I raised in the morning already. It has been, I think, 8 or 10 alerts that I saw for 30 days. That's really minimal. And I think we're done, basically. That's it for this month. We've looked at news from the CRS project. I've presented plugins to you. I've shown you what's new in the log file. We dig a bit deep on these 500s, encountered a funny XML error that is very rare, and then we handled a few not so false positive, and then discovered or encountered a real false positive that I want to report to the CRS project. Good. Let's get back here. Would be time to get, was it this one? Yes. Here we are. We're coming to an end of the session. I say goodbye to you. I'll be back in December with the next webcast. This one will also go on YouTube, and I'll send out the news afterwards. Thank you very much for joining. Buckle up and goodbye.